All right, explain to me why not writing?
We're not writing
Why
a book,
coding?
man. Yeah, we are creative artists.
Okay. Explain that to me. You're a creative artist.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
You create something from just a number of comments. You use language in a way, but it's abstract language. It's different. No, you can say writing code. That's just.
So you're writing code for coffee? Yeah.
Yes, writing code for coffee. Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
What's that like? What was that like when you first started Cropster?
So actually, I was coding. I never coded for Cropster.
Oh, true. Okay.
But I coded before.
Okay.
So I, of course, at university or even before, like I started coding when I was, 15 years old.
Nice.
That was really on like those ancient computers.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 megabyte hard drive and some kilobytes of RAM.
Okay.
So like amazing.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. Well, how did you learn though?
That was high school. So we had a class
Okay.
which was programming.
Okay.
And we like some C. The C programming language was the first one I started. And it was quite interesting. So I was quite drawn to that. So I continued at home. And really coding is not something I would say you really learn at a school or at a course. You get inputs, you get guidance. As we had heard at other episodes, you get a structure. Like when you participate in a competition, you get a structure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you have to learn on your own. And I think that's what coding is also. Not even the world is the limit. It's beyond that. You can do as much as the computer lets you.
Yeah.
And as much as your brain kind of lets you. So I was really fascinated by that, and also by the just the fact that you could do a lot of repetitive tasks in a very short amount of time.
Okay.
So in the beginning, I did a few things. One was like, how can I make it useful? So automate things. I was halfly obsessed by telling my computer what to do when it starts. So back then, you could program a file which would be run through when your computer starts, and it would do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Load drivers and not load drivers, and to put certain things in place.
Yeah.
That is one part of coding that was not super like advanced. And then I was very interested in also the creative part of it. So playing with that display was amazing.
Okay.
Certain infinity loops with different colors and moving things on the screen based on mathematical descriptions of doing that. And so basically seeing what a mathematical formula can visually do.
Okay.
It was super interesting.
Yeah.
And then I did also, I like music, I love music, but I'm not very good at creating it on my own.
Okay.
So I thought like it's such a fun concept to program the notes which are written in a note sheet into the computer, and you can do that.
Yeah.
So I basically sat down and programmed my computer to play a song. And that back then again it was only the sound was just a beep. And you could alter the height of that beep a little bit, and you of course could program it how many milliseconds it should sound.
Okay.
And that created songs I would program in.
Nice.
Yeah. So fun things really.
Yeah.
And then later, so that was kind of my first. Again, that was pre-internet.
Yeah.
So it was I could only program something which would run on my local machine, and it was interesting, building databases, playing with data. But my real excitement started when the internet came about.
Okay.
And that's when I started using databases and programming for websites.
Okay.
So you could make something useful.
Yeah.
And not only for you, but for everybody.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And also like putting stuff into the cloud was way more safe and secure for me than having it on my local machine, which would either catch a virus or die. All those things happened to me, of course. Or those floppy disks we had, they would eventually be wiped, or a magnetic field would erase them. So suddenly you could put data into the cloud, which is either like protected by passwords, being more private. I started to travel back then, 2001. I did my first international trip, and put my documents into the cloud, so I could, if I needed to have a passport or something, I could access that.
Wow.
And to me, that was more safe and better, because I was staying in weird hostels and traveling just with a backpack. Things could get wet or stolen or something. And knowing that I could just go into an internet cafe and just download those things and print again. That was awesome. It was an awesome thought.
So did you ever code or do any of that type of work in like the coffee cafe setting? Like, what is it about that culture that makes people want to go? I mean, I know why people want to go to cafes, but even to this day, I still see a lot of developers, they go and work in cafes and just do their coding there. Like, why?
Well, I think I would say it depends a little bit. The coder lives in his or her head.
Okay.
So you're just in your own. You have to hold a lot of thoughts, what you want to create. Mm-hmm. You hold a lot of variables, a lot of references, and they need to be present in your head until you write them down into routines, which then on their own work and solve that problem.
Okay.
So you got to be very focused.
Okay.
At the same time, doing that at home can make you a very lonely person. So you're basically shutting the world out, and you just do that. And I had days where I forgot to eat. I just wanted to do this, and you're so busy and you're so in your head that it wouldn't matter if there's food or not, or what else would go on. So I think escaping that and going into a more social environment can actually help you a little bit. It can also distract, and I think depending on what you actually do.
Okay.
So how much deep coding are you actually doing, or is it more designing on creative work? So that's part of it.
Okay.
The coding is basically putting it in place, but before that you need to do a lot of research or think about how to actually design your routines. And that takes time, and that's also part of the creative thing. How do you want to solve that problem? There's so many ways. And I think a coffee house can stimulate that, being with other people but still being on your computer doing your own thing.
No, for sure. I want to go back to what you said too about when the internet came out, and now it was more than just coding for yourself, but coding for people, for everybody. I think of that because recently I watched the playlist on Netflix about Spotify. And their whole thing when they started Spotify was they just want to make music available for everybody. They want to build something that makes music free and available for everybody. So it makes me think, it's is that like a unique trait amongst the developers, or people, or visionary developers who have that kind of mindset, or is that just maybe unique to a few? Is that to want to make technologies, develop technologies that are just accessible?
No, I think it's not unique, but it's you always have those two extremes. You want to liberate everything and democratize and give it out there and let the people use and do. And then there's of course the other end where it's everything is behind a paywall and hidden and monetized, and there's a lot of intention or keeping the power. So I think you have both, and I've come across both, right? You see the people working with highly secure systems and are not necessarily wanting to share, and then you have the other people who just want to share everything.
Yeah. That's true.
And the cool thing is when you hear about that, right? Snowden and all those people just felt like they wanted to get something to the world, and the internet is just such an interesting place to do that. Yeah. Because so many people are connected, and it's so, once it's out there. People can download, can take a screenshot, you can reach a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
For good, for bad, and that's all. I mean, that's an age-old discussion, so I don't know. Get into that. Yeah. I was always fascinated by just the sheer power of, hey, you have useful information, or you have something which could be used by more than one person, and instead of shipping physical mail around the globe and having a time difference or time delay of information access, I mean, we shipped paper, then we shipped CDs, and now we don't need that anymore. So people can just I just put it there, and it's immediately accessible to either everybody or the people I want to share. And that's very intriguing, I think.
Yeah. That's true.
It's very efficient, and it's very cool because you get the immediate feedback, of course, or you can. I remember when I moved here, I lived in an apartment complex, and I still had to fill out those, what was it called?
Rental application forms?
No. When something was to fix, the request for fixing something in your apartment.
Okay.
Those were pieces of paper, so I had to go down to the office, grab one, go back up or fill it out there, and it was kind of cumbersome. And that to me that needs to change. I cannot, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to fill out a paper form which then someone puts into an Excel sheet or not and follows up, and
when you can just put an Excel sheet yourself, for example.
An online Excel sheet, right? So, of course, there's a data privacy thing. So you don't want to see everybody's maintenance request. But I basically went down to the guy and said, hey, you have a website. Can we please put that form online? And he's like, you can do that? I was like, yes. Why don't I show you this afternoon? And he was fascinated. Like, this is cool. It's an online. It was a simple online form at the end of the day. The beauty of all this is right. Paper is very patient, so people put in whatever they want. And sometimes he got requests for apartment 517, and there was no 517. Right. So we just put in a list, like pick your apartment number, and you can only pick yours. Or, hey, we need your phone number, or we need your permission to enter if you're not there. Yes or no, at least, right? And on a paper, you would say nothing, then they would have to call you, and it's like, hey, can you go? And the form was very clear on that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things you can do. Which makes it efficient and clear and structured. And suddenly, so like that form was then communicated via email to the apartment manager. They had a database where they could go in and see, hey, was everything fulfilled, adding the cost, internal cost center structure and stuff. So using the same data 5 different times was so much better.
Yeah.
And I'm still so motivated by that, and now that's what we do for the coffee people now, right? To not have everybody's copying results on one piece of paper, which then lives on their drawer or on their desk, but actually in a central place where other people can look at, make sense of it, learn from it, make use of it, and link it up with other data, and have a history, and have averages calculated and whatnot, right? So
No, that's true for sure. So when you, even before Cropster, when you were in this world of technology and agriculture and whatnot, researching, what are some of, when you're when you or your colleagues are writing code for let's just say just an agriculture product, right, in general, what are some things you have to consider when you sit down and you want to do this? I mean, this is a very foundational founder story, but also what is it about the the actual software they have to think about and remember. And
so I created the version before Cropster. At the research center.
Okay.
So that was part of my master's thesis, and then also part of my research work, which then I had other students working on. So it was not a beautiful piece of code and not a beautiful system, but it was a proof of concept.
Okay.
But it was already online. It had a name, it had a design, it had huge databases behind it. And when you come as a programmer into this world and want to create something for example, for farmers, and I still remember coffee varieties, right? So the first question, the question is always, do you sit down with the farmers or with whoever you built the database for and say, hey, what do you do? What is the data structure? What do you want to capture? And they would say, yeah, coffee varieties are important. It's like, cool. How many are there? It's like, we have Caturra, we have Catuai, we have those 5. And you think, or you start thinking, oh, that's great. So the world consists of 5 coffee varietals. Perfect. Let's put them in a list, and we are good to go. Right? Suddenly you realize there's hundreds.
Yeah.
And it's okay, well, then we add hundreds. Not a problem. Database is big. Put them in.
Yeah.
And then people call you. It's like, well, I have actually a mixture of Variedad Colombia and Caturra. I was like, mixture? That's uncomfortable. Like, this was a simple drop down with just one value, right? Now you make it complicated. So that means, does it mean that the general use of varieties is that you can have up to 2? Okay, let's do 2 drop downs. And suddenly people come and it's like, oh, I have this and that, and I don't know, and then I want to add my own names, and it all becomes. So what I'm basically saying is, the world is very flexible in certain ways and naturally grown, and the database is very strict and very organized. That is the beauty of it, but also that's the limitation.
Yeah. Would you say that's kind of a reason as to why Cropster is focused so much on coffee and developing software for coffee, that with all that kind of flexibility and those requests when you first started, it's kind of like you've created kind of like a product that's just like the master of coffee, kind of like a big, like, not, I don't want to say master, but it's just so coffee focused, and it's so good for the industry.
Well, we started as a crop database, really.
Yeah.
So you could have other. We were always focused on high value specialty crops, and it's still up to date. We have not only coffee in the database, we have olive oil. There's people using it for cacao and chocolate, and so it is capable, and we have tea. So to use other products, but it also, we realized every product is very, very specific, and to make it really flexible does do a disservice to, you either are very generic, and then you're not as specialized and as specific for each product, or you make it very specific and it becomes really cluttered and complex, almost impossible to maintain. And that was a little bit our experience. So we went back and forth. I mean, at a time we had 200 agricultural products in our system, and not only like as I said, coffee, cacao, but even derivatives like cheese and meat and I don't know what.
Yeah. Cheese.
And it was cheese.
Cheese.
Yeah, but it was fun and it was interesting to learn and to see how this all comes together. But we also learned from it to, stick to something and do it well. And we liked that more than doing everything not very well. So it basically brew and boiled down to coffee. And now we are very specified and specific on coffee, focused on coffee. We speak the language, we know the product, we could really dig in deep. And I think that adds to the quality of what we can do.
Okay.
There's still a lot of room for, as I said, when you capture data, it is always as complex or complete as the database is designed. The more complex you design it, the more complex it is to query and to actually get information out. The less complex it is, the more it's like a notes field. So you could also say, instead of putting 5 fields in, saying, well, it's the lot name, a harvest date, variety, processing method, you could also say a notes field, and it's like, describe your coffee. And you can put in whatever you want.
Okay.
That is a database.
Yep.
You could potentially search for stuff, but you cannot categorize it.
Yeah.
You cannot really find, well, it's not efficient.
Yeah.
And it's harder to find or sort for specific information.
Yeah.
Everything becomes one.
Yeah. So it's kind of finding like this balance of like, I mean, in your words, like a notes-based kind of software versus like an overly complex software with too many data points where it becomes hard to search for your data.
That's right. And it also becomes cluttered. So there's so many dynamics at play, right? One thing is the database, and that's already a complex structure, but it can be mastered and done. But then you also have what you do with that data and how you present it. And that becomes even more interesting, because the problem is not on the back end, or not so much on the back end with complex queries and big databases and a lot of data points. It's more, can the user deal with it? So now you're talking about user interfaces, where if you put the user in front of 10 fields or 5 fields, they can focus and they feel not intimidated. They want to fill that out. They feel happy about it. Put 300 fields in front of them, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Overwhelming.
It's so much, right?
Yeah.
And even if you can customize and so on, so we call it like visual noise or cluttering, and so we speak about screen real estate.
Yeah.
And there's this fight for making it beautiful, making it accessible, but also making it efficient. And you can see that, like, the more you see industrial systems, the more you see 50 data fields in one screen, and it looks not so great. It's more like a table with a lot of stuff going on, but you can quickly see a lot of information.
Okay.
And the more you go into the really end user consumer sector, it's more like 1 field, 2 fields.
Yeah.
Put something in, click a button, get something out, keeping it light.
Okay.
Don't ask too many questions.
Yeah.
But again, it all depends what the use of it is. So we, of course, we are a professional database for coffee. We cannot just be. This is not fun and games.
Yeah.
It's fun. I think. I hope so.
Yeah.
But it also has a business meaning, and certain things, certain data points just need to be visible and accessible.
Yeah, 100%. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No. It's a lot to think about. You know, it's things I just don't consider, or we don't consider. You know, we just see this product and it's like, oh, enter this, enter that.
Yeah. Let's
pull this. You know, but there's a lot of thought that goes into.
There's really a lot, and when you look at how that all happens, and when you look at our development team, how multi-layered that is, like they have to consider everything.
Yeah.
You have to consider bandwidth and connection. You have to consider what are important data points. You have to consider a customer doesn't want to wait 3 minutes to get a response when a click happens.
Yeah.
They have to also consider that it should look beautiful and smooth. So there's also a lot of psychological design going into the product, where it should make sense, right? So the UX design in the early, and that was also cool for what we did at my research position. We researched interfaces for farmers. So we went out there and saw how could a farmer interact with a tool. It is really amazing to see. Of course, they're like big companies like Apple and Microsoft, and those they do that extensively. And create products which are usable. So it's called like human computer interface design, or yeah, that's a research area.
Yeah.
And you I think you know that, right? So certain remote controls, you have them in your hand and they just work. And others, you're constantly looking for, where's that button? How do I get there? And it's simple things, but it's either studied and it's adjusted to how our brain potentially works and built in a certain design that it works.
Yeah.
Or it was just someone thinking, oh, we need 5 functions, we need 5 buttons, let's put them on a remote control, good to go. And it's not good to go.
No,
right?
no, yeah.
And then the complexer the system gets, the more thought needs to go into that. When I show this, what else do I want to show?
Yeah.
When I show that, where do I go next?
Yeah.
How does a user understand that they are in level 3 of 5 levels and they can go back and forth? And so all this like journey through the software is very important.
Yeah. I mean, I do know there's like a lot of logic. I mean, obviously we can all be logical in like our lives and our work and whatnot, but I know for like development specifically, like there's so much like logic, like literal logic that has to go into it. Like, and I only know that because one time I tried to code a website, not code a website, but fix the code on a website that I was using on Shopify, and Shopify allows you to adjust some code a little bit. And I realized after fixing this code, it started affecting this page. And then this page was affecting another page. So then you go down this kind of rabbit hole if you don't realize what you're doing. And it's like, next thing you know, you don't know how to go back.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, someone like me who doesn't know anything about coding, thinking, oh, I'm just going to fix this page to fix this thing. And like everything affects one thing. It's like a domino effect almost.
Yeah.
And like to me, it was like this. That's when I realized this is a very, very complex field of work.
It is, and sometimes simple things like, hey, can we add another field to the database?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can. The database itself, adding a field, takes little time.
Yeah.
But that means that field is not yet shown on an interface, and that's where the time goes in. It's like, where do you want to see it? Mm-hmm. Who fills that field? Who is responsible? How do you want to see that field? Is it just text field? Is it a drop down? Is it something self-learning? So there's all those options.
Yeah.
And then we show it on interface 1, but what about 2? Oh, there's a report page. How many reports should use it? Should we put it on all those reports? Oh yeah, those reports is also there's a PDF printout. Oh, it's missing there because it's but it's online.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not enough. We also need it on the PDF.
Yeah.
And so it's like adding one field can have exactly that ripple effect through the entire platform.
Yeah.
And you have to update 20 pages or more.
Oh my gosh.
To make sense of it, right?
Of course,
to give it to the people and to actually make use of it.
Yeah.
But it's a simple request, right? Initially, it's more like, can you just add this? And it's like, it makes total sense, sure. And it's like, oh yeah, we can, but it might take a little bit of a while.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. No, that makes sense. 100%. So, in my head, this makes sense, but what you're speaking on, and I'm wondering if you can talk about on this a little bit, and if you can't, no worries. I learned something in the playlist, and I learned the difference between a server and peer-to-peer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, here we go. I'm gonna networks. Yeah, networks. And so from what it sounds like, what you're saying is that kind of at the base of those two, like of those networks, where like if you do one thing, the system talks to some other thing, so that you can pull up this page and that page. And I don't know, in the show it made sense because they were like talking about like music. So it's like if they play this song, then the network talks to it and then gets this song ready after, so that this song can immediately play. Or
so that's a little bit different, right?
Okay.
But there's two basic structures out there. There's more probably, but let's talk about those two. One is you have information that's stored on one server, and that server has the entire truth. So all the data is centrally stored, and that's, for example, important for telecommunication transactions, for bank transactions. If you go to a bank and do an ATM, it needs to go to one central database to check if you still have the money on your account, right? Or into a distributed system, which is always up to date.
Okay.
Now the peer-to-peer is very different. It's like I store some information, you store some information. So you can get that information from me.
Okay.
But my version might not be the most up to date, or I might not have all the information. So for music, it was a beautiful thing because it's massive amounts of data. And actually, some of the services like the streaming services, they also use that type of infrastructure. So I can get my Netflix movie from my neighbor.
Okay.
Not true. Not how it's happening. But I could, right? So, and that would be basically the network length is from here to there. It's 10 feet. So I need to stream data and transport data from my neighbor's computer to mine.
Okay.
That is very fast. Not a lot of other devices are involved.
Yep.
And I can get quickly to that information. And that matters when we talk about movies or when we talk about music or pictures.
Okay.
And now pictures are usually private, so there's not a lot of that sharing. But music it's the same ABBA song everybody listens to in this earth.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So the chances are everybody wants that at some point.
Yeah.
And those networks made it happen that I could connect to your computer. And you can look at it like, do you have it? It's like, oh, he has it. Copy it over.
Okay.
So that was very efficient. And also it would make basically everybody's a server and everybody's a client. And there was also a legal implication.
Yeah.
Because technically it was not allowed to store certain information on a server and distribute it and give it to the people. So that would be illegal.
That sounds super illegal.
Right. But, and
That's
there was this loophole when
right
Napster was out there, right? But if it's on my computer and shared with someone I don't know, it was almost impossible for the authorities to know that.
Okay.
Because how they could not control my computer so quickly, or so easily, and then not only mine, but like 50 million computers.
Yeah.
You can easier control one server.
Yeah.
But not a network. And I think that's the beauty of like the social networks where information can spread and be shared between people quickly, and suddenly it reaches everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that those network infrastructure or data sharing strategies are very interesting for those.
Yeah.
That was specifically at a time where there were not so many servers available. Right?
Okay.
You had a data center in San Jose, and you had a data center maybe in Sacramento, and you had maybe not even. So everybody was basically getting the information from the Bay.
Yeah.
And then the Bay would have a thick cable down to LA, and then LA would have another server, and so on, like from the early days. And then suddenly they built data centers here and there. So now you have the same, and it has to do with load balancing.
Okay.
And not everybody goes after the same server, but everybody goes after part of that. Everybody goes after one server, part of another server, and it distributes the load.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know if that is any helpful, but that's a little bit the general concepts. And again, I can speak to it. I understand.
I mean, it's just like for me, it's like
how it generally works. But I'm sure there's people out there who would just want to kill me now. That's okay.
No, I mean overall what I'm getting out of it though is like it's just if it's about load, like what you said, like load balancing.
Right.
I don't know how. I mean, there's probably people working on this, but like if it's about load balancing, it's also going to be so crazy in like 10, 20 years, and there's even more data out there. It's like, what are we just going to live around a bunch of data servers like all the time? You know,
it's a constant battle, right? To improve bandwidth, to improve accessibility, response time. Those are super important. So we basically achieved that everybody has a supercomputer in their pocket.
Yes.
Those phones, it's amazing what they can do.
Yeah.
In terms of power, computing power.
Mm-hmm.
But they are nothing if the connection power is not enough. So that's where we have 5G, for example, just to transport more data over the air. That is because now you can watch movies without buffering and waiting, and you could do that already before, but it was you could not do it on an edge network
to the speed at which it is now too.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the quality. Yeah. That's the other thing. Like now we want to watch 4K because we can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it only gets more in that sense. The experience gets better.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key points of why Spotify became successful. I think the idea itself was great, but there were so many others working on that.
Yeah.
But they were not as obsessive with that delay. Like this microsecond of like, you click, you
and
get.
It plays. Yes.
It's the immediate gratification. It's not I click, I wait, eventually it's the song I want, I hear a little bit, now it's not that song, I thought it's like, I wish you were here, but actually it's not from Pink Floyd, it's another one, it's like, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's literally an episode on like the founder, like not being satisfied with
exactly. So
how fast it was.
And he was obsessed with that.
Yeah.
Same Steve Jobs. He was obsessed with certain details. It's like, no, this needs to be 100% right, not 99% right.
Yeah.
And I think that pushes always the boundary, and that makes great products, which ultimately, in this case, succeeded. Mm-hmm. There's so many other factors too, of course. So there's always like the economics of it, and then the marketing and luck, and I don't know what. Yeah. So like it's always like the right time at the right place.
Yeah.
But it definitely also is the right product, because at least that's what the Netflix series demonstrates, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. People were not interested in just a sharing platform. Yeah. Everybody could do that until they saw a beautiful interface, which was quickly searchable, and it had immediate access to that information. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, this is better. Yeah. It's not just a website, because the other websites were out there. Yeah. They were ugly, not usable, not user-friendly. And I think that's what, the iPhone is one of those examples. Was the technology already out there? Yes, it was. Mm-hmm. It's not totally new, right? It was not like, we have a phone where we can. No, that was already out there.
I mean, there's already BlackBerry, Nokia had a phone or whatever.
There was other devices who were already also years before. Yeah. And now there comes a device which is just beautiful. Yeah. You want to have it in your hand. Yeah. That's not unimportant. You touch this all the time. Yeah. And if you don't want to touch it, you don't want to use it. Yeah. Yeah. And then you have a few functions which are just working right. And that's the same with like Google Maps, right? Mm-hmm. You could use it and you could find a spot on Earth. They came out when it was refined to a level where it was actually really useful. Mm-hmm. And you could trust that information. Yeah. And that makes a good product. And now it's, of course, so much more, right? Yeah. But the MVP or the early versions already were amazingly cool.
Yeah. Oh, man. This is sick. Man, it's mind-blowing. Yeah. Opens me up. Heck yeah.
So there's only more to come, I think, and like the desire to share, the desire to access, have access, and also we look at our lives. When we travel, we don't have to bring maps. We don't have to bring printout. Mm-hmm. We don't even have to prepare. I basically can go to the airport right now and not even knowing where I'm going. Because on the way, I booked my ticket, right? Yeah. Theoretically.
I can tell you all about
that. I go to a country I have no idea about. I land at the airport and it's like, I need a hotel. And I have it in a second.
Yeah, literally.
It's all there. So you have information accessible. You don't speak the language. There's a translator on that. There is you have all those services in your hand. And I think that translates that physical world now more into a digital one. Yep. That poses, of course, also its own challenge, but I think as a tool, it's immensely useful. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if you go to that country, if you do that trip, well, please enjoy what you see and also be in that moment and be there. Not just follow websites which tell you what you potentially can or cannot do and tell you how you should feel about it. Mm. So I think there is this line of this is a tool we use and it's immensely practical. Mm-hmm. And then there's life happening, and that is analog, and it has its own rules, and there's people, and there's feelings, and there's emotions, and there's senses, and there's and we can enjoy and use all that too. Yeah. So not everything comes from a database.
Yeah. Facts. I like it. Thanks, Norbert. Yeah. That was cool.
Cool.